Welcome to part 4 of my Soundtrap tutorials. Hopefully you've had a chance to work through parts 1 to 3, which focused on adding chords. And I've got a chord progression open here on Soundtrap, which I basically created in part 3. And at the moment, this is just chords. And I'm using 4 chords here, and we're in the key of C major. And I'm just going to zoom in here just to show you what I've got. So I've got a C chord first of all, followed by a G chord, followed by an A minor chord, followed by an F chord. Chord 1, 5, 6, 4. 1564 is a nice easy way to remember that. And I've added in a couple of different patterns in here as well. So when we get to after 8 bars, so we have our 4 chords twice, I then move between a chord of A minor and a chord of G, and I'll just play that to you. And then I end up on an F chord in bar 13, and also bar 14. And what I'm starting to create here is a bit of a verse, then a bit of a kind of an end to the verse, a little bit of a kind of bridge or transition, and then I've got a chorus section where I've used the same 4 chords in the same order, but I've just slightly changed the pattern. Let me just go back to bar 9 so you can listen. Well, in fact, let's listen from the beginning so we get a real feel for it. So that's my pattern, and you can see that I've varied my chord pattern rhythmically just to make it a little bit more interesting and make it sound a little bit like a chorus. You may have noticed at the beginning I had my metronome turned on, and I just wanted to point that out at the bottom here, because at the bottom of the screen you can either turn your metronome on or off, and this gives you a click, which we're going to be using in a moment to help us put a bass line in. We can also change the tempo, and we can change that by clicking the tempo we want, or just increasing this number. And if we type in 140 and confirm it, then it will actually make our whole song it will speed up our whole song. I'm going to go back to 120 as we started. So we've got a chord progression, and I now want us to start to add a bass line. So I'm going to click on Add New Track, I'm going to click on Guitar and Bass. And I'm just going to click over here on this guitar symbol. In fact, I'm going to click here, sorry. And then it gives us all of the different guitars that we can choose from. So I'm going to go to bass, and I'm going to go to electric bass. And I'm just going to listen to a few. Now you can see there are lots of different bass guitars, all in different categories. So let's look at my electric bass. I quite liked this clean bass, so I'm going to select that one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play in a bass line. So instead of using the piano roll, we're going to start to use this keyboard down here. And you can see that this keyboard has letters on it, and these letters correspond to the letters on our computer keyboard, or QWERTY keyboard as sometimes it's called, because the letters QWERTY are along the top. But this isn't I'm not playing this on a piano or a MIDI keyboard or anything like that. I'm just playing it on my computer keyboard. And we can change the octaves of our bass, because that was quite low. And I'm playing a scale by just playing from a Z up to a comma. Really, really easy. But what I want to do is make sure my metronome's turned on, because I'm going to record this bass line in. And what I want to do is make sure that I've got a click to count me in, because I'm not going to be adding this with my mouse. I'm going to actually be trying to play this in. And so I want to try and make sure it's in time, although I'll be showing you what we can do later to make sure it's definitely in time. So I'm going to turn my metronome and make sure I've got a 2-bar count in. And I've chosen the claves here, clave kind of sound, because I think that that's going to help. I'm going to be able to hear that best. So that's just what I've gone for. But you could have a hi-hat or a tick or a click, whatever you want. It doesn't really matter too much. So I need to be aware of what I'm playing here. So I've got a chord progression with a C, followed by a G, followed by an A minor, followed by an F. So I've actually got Z, B, N, V. And so that's going to help me. So I'm going to add a region. In fact, I don't need to add a region because I'm just going to press record. And then when I press record, I'm going to get 2 bars to get ready to play in a bass line. Now, I've played in a bass line. Now, you may have noticed if you were listening that there were times when I didn't play it quite in time. And I've done that deliberately because I want to show you how we can ensure that our bass is in time and how Soundtrap can help us with that. So, trust me, I wasn't making mistakes. It was deliberate. Here's my bass line on the piano roll. And it might be that you find it hard to spot where those mistakes are. Spot where I made some slight changes. Maybe there's one around here, maybe there's one around here. You'll notice that these patterns all look quite similar. So there's a couple of things we can do here. First of all, we could now take the pattern from the start. So we could take this pattern here and we could say, right, this is the rhythm, this is exactly what we want. So I'm going to hold down my Alt, click and drag, and I'm going to put it up here. So we have exactly what I want. Let's have a listen. So that's one way of doing it. I'm just going to click undo just to change that. The other thing we can do is highlight all of our bass line, right click, and then go to quantize. And what quantize does is basically Soundtrap will move the notes around, move the rhythms around, and make it as Soundtrap thinks we wanted it. So it's basically putting it in time, helping to shift a few things around. So I'm just going to quantize it 1/8. And actually, it hasn't really changed very much. Let's just try that one more time. But let's try it 1/16. Hasn't really changed very much. So sometimes when you quantize, there isn't actually that much to change around. And so what you might want to do is actually just take these patterns and just start editing them yourself. And so I can delete this one and I can move this one up here. But I mean, quantize will certainly help you out. But if you want to make it really accurate and you want everything to be exactly the same, then you can do it like this. But of course, you know, when we play music, it's never all exactly the same. And so if we want to get a little bit more of a true to life sound, then you might want some of these to be slightly different. But quantizing, if you go really out of time, it will shift things around for you and just help you out a little bit. So I'm now starting to build up my bass line, and what I can now do is I can delete that and I can actually highlight all of these and I can Alt, click and drag, and I've got my bass line again. Let's go from the beginning. Now you'll notice here that I actually moved this slightly too far, so it came in just on the wrong beat of the bar, but it's easy just to change it. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. And then when I get to this section here, what I actually want to do now is have a slightly different bass line. And so what might be helpful is to add, create a new region. And I'm going to click on the beginning here. And now I'm going to press record again. Now, I've played something in. Now you may notice that I've not played the correct note. Here we have an A minor chord, and yet I played a C. And the thing is, I just wanted to remind you of this because I know a couple of students have asked about how to quickly change things. Well, if you like the pattern you played in, but you played it on the wrong note, don't worry, because we can easily just move things around. And in fact, the wonderful thing about Soundtrap is that we can actually change keys really easily. We can change the pitches of things. We can do so much because what we're working with here is MIDI. We're working with lots of signals, and the Soundtrap program is assigning instrumental sounds to those signals. So even if we make mistakes, don't delete things. See if you can edit them. See if you can move them around. And if you've got a pattern you like, then use it again. Save yourself some time, but now you see I need to move this down to a G. And it's just as simple as that. Also, you can experiment with just deleting notes and seeing if you like the sound, or you can drag notes out. You could create your own bass lines really simply like this. Let's have a listen to this one. And it might be that you don't like that, it might be that it works for you, but you can easily just delete things and change them. You might just want to have a long note. So you might just want a nice long A ringing out there, followed by a nice long G. Whatever you want to do, it's entirely up to you. You just need to kind of learn to edit, learn to change things as you go, learn to move things around. You don't have to settle for the first thing that you come up with. And of course, when you've created something you like, then we can use our alt click and drag really easily. So that is how to add a bass line to a chord pattern. So you can either put the bass line on the piano roll, or we can play the bass line in using our QWERTY keyboard or using our computer keyboard down here. You can even click on the notes as well with your mouse and it will play them.